Welcome to this edition of the EEEO Conversations. Today we have the chance to explore a new story with Bruno Sirletti, VP Cloud and Digital Business Western Europe at Fujitsu. Bruno, welcome and thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and thanks for inviting me. It's an honor for us.
It's really a pleasure to have you with us, since it seems you are one of the new stories, one of the meaningful, relevant international companies that are exploring the Rendanheyi and trying to take inspiration from some of its principles and practices. Can you tell us a bit more about Fujitsu and why, in terms of market, in terms of business, in terms of strategy, you see an opportunity in taking inspiration from Ayer and the Rendanheyi?
Sure. Actually, it's quite simple. If you look at Fujitsu, so Fujitsu, an IT service company, we are in the top 10 global IT service company. We do about $40 billion globally. And our business has been outsourcing, IT outsourcing and selling IT products I would say for the last 20 years in our history. And when you think about the outsourcing business, it really is a risk management business. Outsourcing is about, you have a customer and the customer will give you, say, 1 million euros in 3 years to perform a service. And then if it costs you 800K to do this service, it's great. You have 20 points of margin. If it costs you more than 1 million, you're in trouble. So it's really a risk-averse business where what you need to do is really calculate the risk, have a very strong governance with a lot of people who will look at the solution, look at the financials to make sure that you give the right solution to the customer at the right price. And also the sales processes are extremely long. So typically a deal, you do it in 1 year. Sometimes it's 9 months, sometimes it's 15 months, but a deal is something that lasts for about a year, and hence you have a lot of time to do checks and things like that. And now the IT market is changing, it's moving to cloud and digital, and here is a completely different model. What you need to do is to respond very quickly to customer demand. So customer will have a demand today and you have to respond tomorrow. So our model, our hierarchical model, was really not adapted to that. And hence we needed a completely different model to tackle this new business. So we looked at a lot of things and we find the micro-enterprise model being the right thing for us, creating micro-enterprises in the field with a lot of autonomy that can then tackle the digital business. We still have the traditional business alongside that, but for the new business, we really rely on these micro-enterprises that we've created.
And I know there is a real story that maybe gave you the energy to embrace a model based on micro-enterprise. Is that right?
Yeah. It's a real story. So one of our French customers some time ago asked us for a resource to do a specific job in cloud. So it really was to do an assessment of cloud capabilities, and they wanted to have somebody to do that. And we didn't have anybody available. So our salesperson just decided to raise the problem and then raise a hiring request, wait for the approval, wait for the talent management team to find the person. And in the end, we came back to the customer almost 6 months after the request from the customer saying, hey, we have your resource. And of course, the customer had even forgotten that they had asked this request, because the next week they had probably gone to one of our competitors to say, hey, can we have this resource? For this, are not giving us the resource. And this was really an eye-opener for us. It really meant, our processes are good for slow-moving, what we call slow IT outsourcing deals, but it just doesn't work for digital and for cloud. So we really needed a change. And I think that was the moment where we kind of realized with the management team that this cannot continue like this, and we had to find another model.
How far does this go when looking really at the market? With that, I think we are seeing an explosion of new digital technologies, switching behaviors and expectations of consumers. We have lots of political uncertainty, lots of societal unrest. I think we are living in times of big changes. how big is this need of being more adaptive, more reactive, or being better equipped to even anticipate a market that is agile, there is digital, there is without boundaries?
Yeah.
Is it a strategic imperative or more, an operational need?
I mean, it started as a tactical thing for the cloud business, but now we're thinking to do that for everything. I think that the old organization of the past with a manager and then 10 people report to the manager and 10 people report to each of them is probably something that was invented, I believe. I mean, I heard two stories. I heard it was invented by the army, and I heard it was invented by the Roman Catholic Church with, a pope and cardinals and bishops and priests and like that. And I don't think, I mean, to your point, I don't think it's adapted to a world that's changing at the pace the world is changing now. We need to be able to change very quickly. And if you're an organization with all these layers, before the person at the top has the information about the changes, it's already too late because things have already moved. So what you need is really empower the people who are with customers every day and give them the power to change things, to do things themselves. And that's what we decided to do initially for the cloud business, and now we're extending to other areas of the business because we believe that this is the right model moving forward.
And let's really jump into it. What's the challenge with that? I can imagine many challenges, but it seems so easy. But I'm aware it may not be that easy.
The challenge is finding the right people. I mean, at least in our experience, it can be different in other companies, but in our experience, the challenge is finding the right people. An organization model is great, but it's only worth what the people who are part of it are worth. And in our case, what we did is that we took existing people from our organization and said, hey, now you have to evolve in a completely different environment. You really have ownership, you can make your own decision, you can hire people, you can self-approve deals. You don't need to go to us to ask for approval, you can do things. And then we found that certain people were extremely happy in this environment, and they made change, they tried things, sometimes they failed, and then they tried other things, and it was fantastic. And then we saw other people that were completely lost. They really were completely lost in this environment. I mean, I think that somebody who has been in a command and control mode throughout their professional life will struggle with this model. All of a sudden, they don't know what to do with this freedom they received. And I would say that the number one problem we found was that one, was really, how can we either find the right people in the right job or coach the people in these jobs to be able to give their full potential.
Has this generated any attrition in the organization? Has anybody left or considered leaving? Hire, as we know, let's say, nudged more than 10,000 people, especially managers, to go and look for a job in micro enterprises. Is this something that you have seen, or you have been able to manage it in a more linear and controlled way?
So yes, there were people who left. Not necessarily the worst, sometimes even the good people left, but just to give you a few figures. So we created initially 15 micro enterprises, and that was around 150 people, give or take a few. We had less than 10 people who left in the first 14 months. So now we're 14 months into the model, so less than 10 people left. In the 10 people who left, there was only one who was head of a micro enterprise. So the other were micro enterprise team members who left, but only one was a head of a micro enterprise. So I would say the ratio, if we can calculate a ratio with such small numbers, would be 1 out of 15 in the managers who left after a year, which I think is below the normal ratio to expect for a turnaround in our workforce. And also 10 out of 150 is below. So yes, people did leave, but less than in other organizations.
Can you tell us a bit more about the structure? So what kind of freedom are the micro enterprises enjoying? How is the organization now looking like? How you decided which micro enterprises to create? Who decided that? If you or the individuals? tell us a bit more about how it looks like for people that don't know your company and that would like to get a glimpse.
Sure. So first of all is that the microenterprises were created for specific portfolios that we wanted to sell. So out of 5 countries, so countries were Spain, Portugal, France, Netherlands, and Belgium. And each of these 5 countries, we created 3 teams, hence the 15 number. And one team was looking after the cloud business, one team was looking after the cybersecurity business, and one team was looking after the digital transformation business. So that was set. So there was no choice for the country to say, oh, I want to do 4 or I want to do 8 or whatever. That was set. Well, actually, they could do more if they wanted, but they were outside of our scheme. So in that scheme said, that's what you have to do. So you have 3 microenterprises in each country for that. The first decision we had to make is who is the microenterprise lead? And that was a joint decision between the country managers and us as a management team, Western European management team. So basically, the way it works is that they propose choices and then we discuss these choices. We agreed on pretty much everything. We had a few struggles, but overall, we had agreement on who the right people were. And then these people could pick their team in the country, and that was their decision. The only, I would say, caveat that we had is that the team could not exceed 12 people. It's the Amazon 2 pizza rule. You probably have heard about it. If you cannot feed a team with 2 pizzas, and must be American pizza, not like the real Italian pizza, like the very big American ones. If you cannot feed a team with 2 pizzas, then your team is too large. So we said, if you want to have cohesion within the micro enterprise, we have to restrict the number. So these were the only restrictions. We get guidelines in terms of, because this was something new for them, and we said, well, actually, your team should have probably business development people, sales people, pre-sales people, consultants, and this sort of profile. But whether they had 1 salesperson and 10 consultants, or 1 consultant and 10 salespeople, that was their choice. And so they set up teams like that. They picked their individuals. In some cases, we didn't have the right individuals, so they just opened the job requisitions to hire people, and then we went. In terms of, because you asked 2 questions. One was how was the team formed, and the other question was, but then what kind of freedom did we give them? So we gave them freedom in a pretty large number of areas. So the first, first of all, let's start with where there is no freedom. So what they had to sell, it's our standard portfolio. The idea is not that they invent a different portfolio in every country and different products in every country, because then they would spend time creating portfolios instead of spending time with customers, and that was not the goal. And also in our job, you gain a lot of efficiency in delivery if you sell the same solution in different places. If you sell a lot of different solutions, you lose efficiency. So we said, okay, what you sell is set. That you don't change. If you think that something is missing, you tell us and we'll make it happen, but you don't design a solution yourself. And then the way you go to market, you can choose. You want to go with a vertical approach and only target public sector and manufacturing, great. You want to target only small companies and not large companies, fine, great. You want to have no horizontal approach at all, no vertical approach at all, and just go to any company, great, it's fine. So the go-to-market is their choice. What is also their choice is hiring. That's, I would say, for us, it was a very cultural shock, because the idea was to say, no, you decide on the hiring. You don't go through the standard hiring process. You can decide who to hire, and you don't have to have approval from your managing director. We trust you. Of course, there were, I would say, a bit of scrutiny from a compliance perspective. If somebody hired their brother and wants to pay him 250,000 euros, maybe we would have a question, but that did not happen. So people did not overuse or abuse the power we gave them. So they could really choose who to hire. Then another thing where we gave them freedom was travel. They say, well, with COVID, then we had a few challenges. That before COVID, it was really, you can travel. You decide that you need to travel to see customers or to have training or whatever, you can travel. You don't need to go through a travel approval that's going to slow down things. We also said training. You pick your training, pay for it, and it's fine. You can choose your training. And then probably the most important one is that within certain boundaries, they can self-approve deals, which means that in general, in our business, before approving the deal, it has to go to peer review, it has to go to solution review, to financial review, to HR review. Here we said, you know what, up to €1 million, you self-approve your deal. You don't need to go through all the process of approving deals unless there are terms and conditions that are outside of the norm, and so there were a few restrictions, but overall is you can self-approve your deals so that you can move fast. And also when you're in front of a customer and the customer say, hey, could we do this? It's not, well, let me check, I need to phone the management, etc. It's really give you empowerment. So that was basically what we set up.
It sounds amazing. And I have two follow-up question. What is the result that you got from this at the financial level, but also at the people level? So how did people feel from it?
So we had 3 metrics to gauge the success of this initiative. One is, of course, financial results. What a surprise. The second one is that we have twice a year, we have an engagement survey, which is we do a survey of all our employees and see whether they're happier, more engaged, or they see problems. And the third one is customer satisfaction survey. So are our customers thinking that we're giving them a better service or not? So we improved on the 3 metrics. So that's the good thing. So we improved on everything. To be completely transparent, I would have hoped even more growth from a financial perspective, but I think it was the first year, it was the setup of the model, and also we launched this model at the beginning of financial year on April the 1st, and something else that happened on April the 1st, unfortunately, was COVID-19. So there was a slowdown in business initially due to COVID-19, although then the business in IT picked up again, but there was a slowdown for some time. But also, I think that one of the elements is we want to build a very strong team cohesion. And when you cannot meet face to face, it's a lot more difficult. So like we created a new team and then some of the team members didn't see each other for 6 months. And so I think that that's kind of what slowed down the model. So I think that we really chose the worst moment to launch this, but still, we did grow our business, and employee engagement also increased a lot, and customer satisfaction increased. So overall, we've actually extending the model to more things this year. So we really think it's the right model. We made a few tweaks here and there, but it's definitely the right model, and we want to move forward.
And the individuals felt happy, engaged, energized about being nudged into this new scheme, right?
Well, some of them felt they didn't have enough support. I mean, that's the thing I was saying at the beginning. I think it really depends on the personality. I think that the people who have more entrepreneur type of profile were ecstatic. They were extremely happy. They really said, yeah, this is the model that we really needed to move forward. So now I have freedom. I own my destiny. And then some people really struggled with that. I mean, there's a few people who really had, it was obvious that they had difficulties in coping with the model. And actually we made a few changes of leaders during the year because some people were just they were not appropriate for the model. Doesn't mean that they were bad managers or anything. It's just that this model was not suited to them.
And all of this an impact also on incentivation, on salaries, or is it more at the organizational level and less in terms of the impact on the individual?
So we decided that, so as a rule, within one micro enterprise, so if I take, for instance, I don't know, France and cloud, that's one micro enterprise. So that's about 10 people. So what we decided is that every single person in that micro enterprise will have the exact same variable pay plan. Which means that either traditionally in an organization, if you're in a sales position, your order taking will be the number one thing that's measured. If you're in a delivery position, probably the margin will be the number one thing that we incentivize people on. Here, because we thought that team cohesion was more important than the individuals, we decided to have the exact same variable pay plan for everyone. And so that was the first thing. And the pay plan was directly linked to the results of the micro enterprise. So if a micro enterprise is successful, they all succeed together. If a micro enterprise is not successful, they all fail together. But it's together the important thing here.
Did they have any space in the setting targets, or the numbers were given?
80%. So no, setting targets, the number were given. We were not brave enough to have self. We saw that in the model, and we were not brave enough to go that far. But what we had is that 80% of the variable pay was set based on financial target, and 20% was discretionary, which means that micro enterprise leads could decide on other things to measure. For instance, I don't know, for the cloud business, it's very important to have certifications. So if they felt that their team had not enough certifications, they could have 10% of the bonus on passing certain certifications on Amazon or on Azure or stuff like that. So it's really 20% was discretionary. So managers could choose how to incentivize their people, but only for 20% of the salary or the variable salary.
And you basically structure the micro enterprise very precisely on the markets and on the business. Is there intrinsically any need for collaboration among them? So what if I want digital and cloud, in the same deal, since I'm a big client and I want to have better conditions, but also integration?
Yes.
How have you, or are you managing this?
Very good question. So first answer is yes. We have customers who want digital, cloud, and cybersecurity. They want the three. And today, the model as we built it did not really incentivize people to work enough together. That's one of the things that we're thinking for the future, and I cannot talk about what we're going to do because it's not 100% decided yet. But yes, that's precisely one of the points. Our vision for the future is an ecosystem of micro enterprise that collaborate. We're not there yet. And we have to find how to make this collaboration possible. And so we are exploring several options to make that work. But it's something that's not working at the moment, and it is important. So yes, it's one of our next milestones in moving this model forward.
What's the barrier with that? On top of maybe you haven't focused on that yet, but do you envision any cultural, any incentivization, any really organizational barrier? Because we see a lot of that. We see that many organizations succeeded in what we call unbundling the firm, so building small teams, whether that's squads, circles, micro enterprises, but then finding a way to reconnect them dynamically without a hierarchy is quite different. It's quite difficult and quite new.
But probably the way we see the future and our market, remember, we're not in the consumer market. We are in selling to large customers market. So probably in the future, it's instead of having micro enterprises dedicated to a technology like they are today, cloud or cybersecurity, it's having micro enterprises dedicated to a customer with a combination of cloud, cybersecurity, and digital and other things as well. That's probably the easy way to connect them, because in the end, what's important is the customer and the outcome that we want to give to the customer. And if you sell cloud, guess what? You will need cybersecurity. And probably if you sell cloud, it's because you want to do something digital. So I think that we started with technologies because it was the easiest way, and that's the way we're structured today. But probably in a year from now, we'll move the model and we'll recombine the micro enterprises by customer or by vertical. If we want to go after the healthcare sector, if you want to go after the financial services sector, and then you'll have micro enterprises by sectors and by customer. So that's likely to happen. Actually, we have 2 tests going on at the moment, one on a vertical in Portugal and one on a customer in Spain, where we've structured a micro enterprise to look after a customer, for instance, in Spain. So there's a team that operates like a micro enterprise, can decide to hire people, not hire people, but their goal is to sell to one customer. That's all.
Very cool. What is happening inside the team? Is there any mandated structure? Is there still a boss? Is there any kind of hierarchy? Are they just flat? Do they use any rituals? Is it a black box? What is happening within the single micro enterprise?
So there is a boss. That's the first thing. So we read about it. We thought that, yes, we could have the self-managed team with no boss. And once again, not brave enough or too far from our existing culture. So we said, no, not for now. Maybe in the future, but not for now. So there is one boss, and then all the others are at the same level. So there's no hierarchy. There's not, I mean, we're not going to recreate a structure with several layers within a micro enterprise. But the way the boss is actually slightly different from a normal boss. It's a leader and not a boss. Actually, the people don't report into the person. He or she is appointed as the leader, so everybody knows that he or she is the leader, but they don't report into him or her. So basically, just take an example of a micro enterprise with salespeople, pre-sales people, and consultants. The salespeople will report into the head of sales. The pre-sales people will report into the head of pre-sales, the consultant people to the head of consulting, and only, I mean, so all the performance management, all these things are done by their official boss, but the leader is the micro enterprise lead. A little bit like, I mean, I started my career in development, in R&D, and usually, I mean, I was a hardware engineer, so I would report to the head of engineering for hardware. But once there was a project, for the duration of the project, I would report into the project or program manager. And he or she would direct all the software engineers, the hardware engineers, etc., for this specific project. But I would say the reporting line remains in the old structure, and that's what we try to reconstruct with the micro enterprise. So you have the good sides of management and not the bad sides.
And that's interesting. It looks a bit like a matrix structure, like right? So you have two reporting lines somehow, yeah, even if that's not exactly a reporting line. Any resistance, yes, from current leaders to let those people go? Maybe they were good people. They didn't want to let them go in a different team, at least functionally. So how have you managed that? Because we have seen this kind of resistance already.
So there were two sorts of resistances, and we really tried to manage them individually by talking to the people. So one resistance was from the micro enterprise leads. So some of them said, oh, but if I don't manage the people, then I'm not a real manager. So, I mean, for me, it's a very old style comment, although I'm not a young person, but for me, it's a very old style comment. But still, you really need to explain to the people that management is not about giving orders or who is your manager in the system. It's about leadership, it's about shared vision, it's about showing where you want to go. And so we need to do a bit of coaching there. It was a bit difficult with some people, I have to say, but probably the people who were probably not the best suited to the model. And then you had resistance from some of the, I would say, non-manager or non-leader in the micro enterprise. And some of them came and said, oh, I don't know who my boss is. He's my boss this one, is my boss that one, etc. And here again, it was explanation, try to explain, listen, who your boss is. I mean, in 2021 is probably not the most important question. What's important is what you do, are you fulfilled in your job, and this sort of thing. So it was discussions. I mean, we were not especially expecting these problems, but they happened, and we really just managed them one by one and talking to the people and spending time with the people.
And what about the previous managers? Let's say those that should let people go into the new structure. Any request or any fear? You are letting my people go. Yeah, I'm losing power. I'm losing status.
Yeah. There was some of that. There was some of that too, and that's, I mean, I'm less familiar with it because I didn't deal with the problem. Somebody else dealt with the problem, but I know it happened. But the country managers dealt with that problem. I only dealt with the problems within the micro enterprises, so I'm less familiar with them. But it did happen.
Another question I had is about what Ayer calls the shared services platform. So, you know, support functions that should provide services to the micro enterprises. or potentially other micro enterprises. I don't know what kind of interdependency you really have in those teams, but how do those services function? So what if I want to have something from HR or from legal or compliance, because this is needed for me to serve the client? Have you found any barrier there or any mechanism for accelerating, for making the transition smoother?
Very good question. And so two separate aspects. So first of all is the support functions. That's, I mean, like the HR or finance and these support functions. So they're not structured as micro enterprises today. And we are actually structuring some of those as micro enterprises in the future. We're planning to do that. Again, something that I cannot announce because the people involved have not been informed yet. So probably good if they don't hear it through an interview. But we are planning to do some of those, to have the functions working as micro enterprises. Today, what I've done, and this is a learning from the model, but what I've done is that I've put into my direct team people who are representatives for this function. So I have a personal representative for HR, a personal representative for finance, etc., for marketing. And these people can be the go-between person between a micro enterprise and the function. So somebody who understands both worlds. And so I have these people, actually, they don't report to me, but they work with me. And so I have people in all the functions. So procurement, well, compliance, we didn't have somebody, but HR is the most important one, etc. So we have really people who understand both worlds. So people coming from HR and are there and become a support function specifically for the micro enterprise to try to bridge the gaps between the two. And then we had other teams, like the teams that we normally have, like the product development team, the solution development teams, and these teams that report to me. And here we had to make a complete change. So the way we used to work in the past was really top down, which is we tell the countries what to do. And so I had to tell my teams, my central teams, that's changed now. You don't tell the countries what to do. They tell you what they need, and what you do is what they need. And that was a huge paradigm shift in the central supporting teams. It happened actually really well, probably because I hired most of the people as new people, so I really took into account the fact that I wanted people who can live in this, what is called sometimes servant leadership positions. And so the people knew upfront that, yes, that's what's expected from you. We don't expect you to guide the countries. And even me, I mean, I'm in a VP position, but I don't give orders to the country. Actually, they tell me what they need to do, and I try to enable and make their life easier. So it also completely changed my job.
Does all of this entail some level of interaction with people outside from the company, collaboration, open innovation, startups, whatever? Is this today mostly related to employees, or there is some kind of openness, exchange across company boundaries?
So yes, there is some form of exchange outside company boundaries. Not many startups yet, although a little bit in the digital business. But it's mostly with our traditional partners, company like Amazon Web Services, company like Microsoft for Azure, companies like Google, and these sort of companies. And all of them are actually very pleased with the model. So we got very good feedback from the model through our external partners. So we're the only region in Europe that has moved to micro enterprises so far, although other regions are thinking of doing the same, but we were the first ones, and to this day, the only one. And very often I got comments from people from, say, AWS who say, you know what, it's easier to work with your region than with the other regions. And it has a lot to do with this local empowerment. I mean, I think that when a partner wants to do something with somebody locally, and then the person say, oh yeah, but now I have to go and ask for permission and blah, blah, blah. And now they see somebody who say, yeah, let's do it. Or no, I don't think this is the right program for us. Why don't we do something else? I think it gives a lot of power. I mean, it's really a lot more flexible, a lot faster. And so our partners really love the model.
And we talked a lot about your own people and people outside, but what about the top of the company? How has this been perceived initially? Was everybody comfortable with that? Because listening to your story and your trajectory in culture, this is a big leap. And I can imagine initially it felt a bit strange. Say, okay, let's remove hierarchy, let's empower people, let's do servant leadership, let's make it fluid. Have you found any fear? But we are not meeting our targets. So we are just confusing our people. We are hiring people that won't know what to do. Any fear in more senior position? I know you are very senior, but I guess even you had to convince some of your peers or colleagues in pulling this off.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I was pleasantly surprised by the reaction of the company. I expected a lot more trouble, exactly what you described. So let's start from the beginning. I have a very good relationship with my boss, who runs the region. So I run cloud and digital for the region. He runs the full region. And actually, we invented this thing together. So João Domingos, who's my manager, we create this model together. So there's no way why he would not support it, because it's his invention. He happens to have a very good relationship with the senior manager, senior vice president for all of Europe, and hence he discussed with this person, and they agreed that, yeah, let's try that in Western Europe. Listen, this is a model. I mean, this is a business that's not growing fast enough in Fujitsu. Like cloud is not growing fast enough. So why don't we try something different? So he really had a go ahead, like from Paul Patterson, so the person running Europe for us, who said, listen, guys, you try it for a year. If it's unsuccessful after a year, we'll see what we do, but just go ahead and try it. And so it was easy. Actually, I had no difficulty, nothing to fight against, etc. And even now, our president in Japan was very excited by the model and said, "Can I have a look into this? Let me see." So I was really expecting a lot more struggle when we decided to implement this model, and actually, it was very easy.
And instead, what about the market? Not just your partners, but other companies. Have other companies as big, as complex as you reached out to know more, to learn from you?
Yeah, we had a few companies reaching out to us, but especially, I mean, we worked with a company called Corporate Rebels, who helped us in this journey, and they published a few articles about us. And so after this article, I mean, every time they publish something, we get 10 to 20 calls from people who want to try to see what we've done, share their experience, ask us things. So yes, we had quite a bit of exchange with companies in all sorts of areas. And by the way, nobody in our area, so nobody in IT ever contacted us, but in all sorts of areas, consumer goods, everything. And it's interesting discussion, because then we share different experience from different companies, and it's good, it's refreshing.
And there's a question I wanted to ask you at the beginning, but then we progress into the story. How all of this is playing out in respect to your own values, the principles, that probably you have. It seems a big leap, but is there any connection to it? Any preconditions on which you have been able to build in terms of creating this experimentation? Or is this really a disruption in comparison to everything you have done so far?
Well, this is personal, right? I will talk about my personal experience. And I mean, I've been a manager for probably 25 years or something like that. And something that I've really seen is that people don't give their best when they're told what to do. That's something that, I mean, in 25 years, I don't know how many hundreds of people I've managed, and I've really seen that if you tell people, you micromanage people, they will not give their best, because they will not feel responsible for something. They feel you are responsible, and they are just a means to achieving something. So they would just do the job that's needed, and that's it. Whilst if you give them the responsibility, so instead of saying you do that task, you say, you know what? This is what we're trying to achieve. Go achieve it. And if you need help, I'm here. People are a lot more effective. I've seen that. I've seen that in the companies I worked for in the past, and I think that I was in HP. I will give praise to some of my competitors, but I was in HP, and I think that HP at the time has a fantastic management system. We were really trying to empower people, really try to give them, saying, listen, instead of telling you what to do, we give you objectives, and then it's up to you to try and reach those objectives. So I think that for me, it was a natural choice. So it's just pushing one level further the thing, which is we really want to try to give more autonomy to people. So now let's make it institutionalized. Let's put a framework around it. Let's create a system around it. But this is something I truly believe in as a manager, is that if you give order to people, you will have people who just execute the order, but not go the extra mile. Whilst if you give people objectives, they will really own it and live through their objective.
What's the role of the leader in this kind of transition, your role?
Yeah.
We are seeing a pattern here. If you look at Ayer with John Grimin, but also Tony Shane's Apples, at the end, there is somebody at the top or near the top that is brave enough, willing to get this started, to take the risk, to put his or her own face on it. Is this mandatory in your case? Is this really important? How to go beyond you in this transformation? So if you, as a company, want to scale this, at the end, you need many Brunos, and not just one. Any thought about this? Because we are seeing this as a potential failure point, or anyway, a bottleneck in most organizations, even progressive organizations.
I think that you need three things. You need a vision, and the vision can be my vision, but can also be the company's vision. So we need a vision. So that's the first thing. Then you need people who can share this vision. So I think that one of my skills in the organization is that I'm able to share a vision and make people adhere to it. And I think you need people like that. So you need a vision, and anybody can construct. I mean, the vision can be constructed in another part of the company. But what you need is to believe in this vision and share this vision with your teams. And then, because vision is one thing, and then you have to be supportive. So it's really a combination of, you give the vision, you say, this is where we want to go, motivate people to go there. But at the same time, if people start struggling and say, oh, you know what? I don't have marketing budget enough, so I cannot generate leads for my thing. I need to be there to help them and to solve the problems, because that's what they expect from you. So yes, there is the shared vision aspect, which is the most pleasant aspect. And then there's the other aspect, which is listen to all the problems and try to solve as many problems as possible. So I think that that's what makes a micro enterprise structure successful. You need to have leaders who can share a vision and convince people to follow that vision, but at the same time be there and fight for their team when they need. That's what I think is the ideal to have a construct like this.
And do you expect this to be replicated in other regions? So at the end, is this a model that, okay, maybe it's not your call, but that could be useful also in other places, that could become, let's say, the standard, the way of organizing yourself with all the evolutions that you're already thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm 100% sure it will happen in other parts of Fujitsu, because we receive many calls from many countries and many regions in Fujitsu. So João and I have explained, have documented what we've done. We sent it to them. We had calls to discuss it. I had one this week again. I had more than 10 calls like that, where we explained to a different country what we've done, and then they ask, etc. So at the moment, nobody has officially launched the model, but a lot are trying, are seeing how it fits their organization. So I'm convinced it will happen.
And would you have any recommendation for companies, different companies, that may be a bit less convinced or less ready or less brave, whatever, but still sharing some needs, the needs that you described initially? So trying to be closer to the market, more reactive to customer requests. How to start, where to start, how to address those fears, why your story could be interesting for them too.
So, I mean, I would certainly not say that we have found the panacea that will solve every problem that exists in the world. Otherwise, I'd be rich and it would be great. But no, it's not. It's not going to be like this. So I think that first of all, you shouldn't have a solution and try to find a problem. I think you have to start with having a problem. Okay, in our case, it was I'm too slow. I'm really too slow to react in this market, and I need to find a way to change that and keep the old organization as well, because we still need our outsourcing business. So that was our specific problem. So the first thing is not a solution in search of a problem, but you need a problem, and then this can be a solution. So it can certainly be a solution to an agility question. You want to be more agile, you want to be fast. So if a company has problems like that, yes, this can be a solution. Can also be a solution, I think, for motivation and empowerment of employees. If you have an organization where you have employees that feel that their job is meaningless because their job is just receive orders from the manager, execute the orders from the manager, and go to bed at night, and they don't find that very fulfilling for them, yeah, that can be something that is the right approach that can help solve the problem. So I think if you have some of these problems, and I think they happen in several companies, yes, this can be the solution. But one thing that is very important in my mind is don't go halfway. Don't do a bit of this, but still you retain control, because it's not going to work. You have to have a leap of faith. You have to be brave. You jump to the other side. It will either work or not work. So I hope you have an organization that accepts failure and takes failure as learning, which is the case that we had. We said, okay, let's try it. And if it fails, then it fails. And we've just lost 1 year, and that's it. And but I think that you have to jump. You have to really jump and not just go a little bit in this model, because it's not going to work. It's completely different from a traditional model, and you have to go full way into the model.
And then you are suggesting another question. Is this for everyone? Is this for every company? Because I see quite distant from traditional hierarchies in which control and reducing risk, and I know that your business is a bit about that, are core. Do you see these needs important for every industry, for every company, and this possibility accessible for every company? Or at the end, maybe if you don't have the right culture, you don't have the right sponsors, maybe you don't have the right business, this is not for you.
I mean, in my mind, but this is just my opinion, probably 95% of the company can do this. Probably there are some industries where this is not the right thing to do. There are, I mean, if I took my first example, probably you don't want to do this if you have something that's close to an army or a police force, because here you really want the people to follow a certain number of guidelines and not start going wild and doing and trying new things too much. But I would say for the normal businesses, I would say yes, because of one thing, because the world is changing so fast with everything that's digital, that probably the manager at the top cannot keep pace with everything. It's just changing too fast. And so people on the ground will always have a lot more information than the person who's at the top. And so if you continue to have the orders given by the person at the top, you will probably play with the wrong data. So you really need to trust more the people who are facing customers every day and really know what's happening with customers.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of the market right now.
Yeah,
exactly.
So
I think it's important for many people. I have one last question for you. We talked a lot about business and people in business, but let's close with a question about the world. So people outside from the company that maybe are not even clients or customers of the company. Has all of this any impact on them, on society, on us as citizens, on us as individuals? Because at the end, we spend most of our time working for companies. So we most of our time interacting with companies, whether that's B2B or B2C. And probably reading from your words, you see organizations today not equipped to provide the right experience or maybe the right outcomes, the right value to the market. So does this go beyond the company, beyond even the business? Could this have an impact on society at all? And I think with COVID, we learned that a bit of help in this space could be really important.
So, I mean, Fujitsu is a Japanese company, and Japanese companies are really interested in values that go beyond the business values. I mean, this is something that's really striking. I mean, I work with companies from other countries than Japan, and now in the Japanese companies. And I think that Japan are more sensitive to societal issues than many other companies. And they really don't fake it. I mean, they really mean it. Probably has to do with the fact that their country has been exposed to the worst disasters you can think of. I mean, you have a very small agricultural land, you have typhoons, you have tsunami, you have earthquakes. So, I mean, Japan, I think, had their share of difficult times in history. And so Japanese people really put society at the front of everything. I mean, we call ourselves the human-centric IT company, and we really value these things. So has the micro-enterprise model helped on those aspects? Well, to some extent, I would say yes. It certainly helped be more human to our employees first, but then also to our customers. So yes, it does help. And then I think that whenever we do something, we really have that in mind. I mean, when you hear our CEO even talk to the president, as we call him, to the employees, he always put these human values before everything else. When the head of Europe talks about everything, always starts the talks with values that are, how can we make society a better place? So I think it's part of our DNA as a company, and I think that the model contributes to this. Is it like the main reason we're doing it? No, but I think it does contribute to this.
I think we are at the end. Thank you so much for all the insight that you brought. It's really refreshing to see other organizations from different countries and different industries with a different culture, somewhat going in the same direction that the Hire and the Rendanheyi are exploring. And we hope this conversation could serve as a nudge, as an inspiration, as a food for thought for other organizations to maybe try something new and to put people at the center, as you said. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'm sure we'll talk soon about your progress and new ideas that will come up in your journey. Thank you, Bruno.
It was a great conversation, at least very pleasant from my side. So thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are incredibly thankful to Bruno Sirletti for accepting to update us regarding Fujitsu's transformation story. Their experience had several pieces to the global mosaic of Rendanheyi adoption experiences currently happening worldwide. Among the many areas we touched upon, the following ones are those that stand out because of their impact on our collective understanding of the organizational and business challenges the market is facing. The first one is the strategic value of the Rendanheyi. First of all, it's now demonstrated beyond any doubt how the Rendanheyi is uniquely positioned to offer the strategic advantages such as speed, business agility, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, thousands of incumbents and large players desire the most in environments that for decades have been struggling to achieve them. More than just pointing to exotic organizational practices, in the future, a systemic unbundling and rebundling of the firm closer to the customer will be the watershed between successful leaders and failed contenders. The second one is that the Rendanheyi works in traditional organizations. But nonetheless, we are seeing more and more corporations sincerely interested in taking the chance to relinquish control, empower customer-facing employees, shave off unnecessary processes and procedures to thrive in a more turbulent and unpredictable landscape. Fujitsu shows how Hire's model is appealing not just to nimble, young, progressive startups, but also to large, complicated, and much more traditional companies that find in it the opportunity to get rid of bureaucracy, of organizational and technological debt, and the slowness preventing them from capturing competitive opportunities. Third, whether now the Rendanheyi requires an agile, hybrid, business and people-centric rollout. Through a hybrid mix of piloting, experimentation, bottom-up learning on one side, but top-down sponsorship, commitment, and support on the other side, a Rendanheyi adoption journey looks quite distant, quite different from the typical digital transformation path happening today in most firms. The right dose of courage, business acumen, curiosity, and vision is mandatory to imagine success and achieve those quick wins that allow a more extensive and impactful rollout to the entire firm. Fujitsu journey cautions against an excessive aspiration for planning or control, and instead invites a humble, inclusive, nearly faithful participation into the outcomes that self-management can achieve when adequately supported by the leadership. And again, starting from the product seems to be a good idea. Starting from the product to close the gap with customers. Fujitsu experience suggests a specific criterion for rolling out the Rendanheyi artifacts, such as microenterprises and ecosystem microcommunities. Product offerings act as good candidates for picking the initial set of microenterprises due to their being self-contained, requiring multidisciplinary competencies, and reducing the effort on behalf of the organization. Still, fragmentation must eventually be overcome by rearranging or dynamically reconnecting business capabilities around customer needs. And guess what? Ecosystem micro-communities smoothen this step as they build on top of the existing organizations and don't require a complete dismantlement of the hierarchical structure. This is the step the Japanese player is currently entering into. An industry or a customer may be valid recombination principles, a customer journey or a user scenario are very reasonable alternatives. And then another couple of thoughts. The first one is that transitioning support functions, what Ayers called service support functions, SSPs, requires attention. Support functions such as legal, HR, IT, marketing, or even sales are not currently part of the scope addressed by Bruno and his team. And laser focus on business needs and results makes perfect sense. It is the prioritization on which many more firms agree when taking inspiration from Ayer. Nonetheless, this choice also bears risks, as the initial group of micro enterprise owners may lack the concrete levers for convincing their colleagues to provide support services in a way that effectively fosters entrepreneurial success. Formally pre-negotiated agreements with support functions are a strategy to mitigate similar resistances. And finally, the evolution that we are looking at, the adoption of the Rendanheyi may be quicker than expected. A final noteworthy insight emerging from our conversation is the relatively short time frame required to Fujitsu for seeing the results from 12 microenterprises in 4 countries. Such speed appears even more impressive when considering the global pandemics that intervened at the time of the launch of the project, and also the early signs of extension of the initiative to the rest of Europe that are coming as a feedback from it. Thus, while in a large structured organization, no profound upheaval is conceivable in a matter of weeks, a well-formalized and supported program may indeed reach scale in a time interval that is slightly longer than 1 year. These are our takeaways from the amazing conversation we had with Bruno about Fujitsu. What are your learnings from listening to him? And how would you design your company's evolution to take inspiration from Ayer? Let us know by listening to the interview and sharing your feedback in the comments. See you in our next EEO conversation.